The joint subcommittee hearing will now come to order. First of all, I want to welcome our friends from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and let me start by again welcoming you in particular. Well, let me just recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Again, welcome, and Chairman McFarland, congratulations. It was good to meet with you for a few minutes before the session. Commissioner Apostolakis will be unable to be here today since he's visiting his mother in Greece. We wish him safe travel and pray that he feels better soon, that she feels better soon. A lot has happened since the Commission last testified before this committee. Early this year, the NRC issued the first license for new nuclear plants in 34 years. In March, the Commission issued orders to implement post-Fukushima improvements. Only 2 weeks ago, we saw a changing of the guard as Chairman Yasko exited and the Commission and Chairman McFarland was sworn in. Under Chairman Yasko, the last 3 years had been turbulent for the NRC, to say the least, and the change of leadership was long overdue. With the new chairman today, today's hearing provides an excellent opportunity to review policy and governance of the Commission. We can gather important perspective from the commissioners and, importantly, Chairman McFarland about the future of the Commission and its work. This is an opportunity not to dwell on the past, but to look to the future through some of the important lessons of recent Commission events and actions. It is critical for our oversight that we examine weaknesses in the NRC governance identified during the past chairman's tenure and to assess the many policy changes facing the agency. One broad area of policy interest concerns regulatory priorities. In its other work, this committee has focused significant attention on the combined effect many substantial EPA regulations has had on our nation's coal plants. It should be of no surprise, I am similarly concerned about the potential impact of numerous post-Fukushima and other regulatory changes on our nation's nuclear plants. Without a doubt, the industry must ensure safe operation and regulatory compliance. None of us would tolerate anything less. However, I believe it is incumbent on the Commission to consider the cumulative effect regulatory changes have on safety. In a March 2011 information paper to the Commission, the NRC staff cautioned that the cumulative effects of regulation, and I quote, can potentially distract licensee or entity staff from executing other primary duties that ensure safety or security, end of quotes. I believe this cumulative effect risk is valid. The NRC and the industry had a full workload of safety improvements under development before the Fukushima accident occurred. The Commission must be diligent about ensuring its licensees can focus on completing changes with greatest safety significance rather than being diverted onto other less important changes simply to meet artificial timelines. Adequate protection is about risk reduction, but should not be confused with risk elimination. Risk is inherent to all sources of energy, yet energy is necessary to our health and well-being, to heat our homes, grow our food, and power our economy. With the Atomic Energy Act, Congress endeavored to balance the benefits nuclear energy brings to the general welfare with protection of public health and safety. Our goal as legislators and yours as regulators should be to preserve that balance. I want to thank all the commissioners for coming here today to update the committee on the NRC activities, and I look forward to their testimony and willingness to answer our question. And I'd like to yield the balance of my time to my friend, Mr. Terry from Nebraska.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this very important hearing. As you may be aware, I introduced legislation in December of last year in response to many of the concerns that were being raised at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the IG reports confirmed those concerns. I want to welcome the new chair of the Commission and relay that it's my sincere hope that we can work together. I want to also stress that the NRC has been known throughout the world as a premier regulatory agency that has been known to work together. I hope we can restore the confidence that people once held with the NRC. Now, during my questions, I want to discuss aspects of my bill to get your feedback, particularly on the previous abuse of emergency powers and maybe setting those down in a more certain way. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Does Mr. Barton want the remaining time? Then Chair reels back his time now. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and I want to welcome our commissioners back to our committee. Chair McFarland, congratulations on your recent appointment. We're aware of the situation that you inherited, and I applaud your enthusiasm and willingness to address the governance issues head on. I know some of my colleagues continue to have concerns about some of the actions initiated under the former Chairman Jasko. I do hope that we can allow the new chair the opportunity to tackle some of these governance issues before making any assumptions on the NRC's work going forward. In the meantime, we should focus our committee oversight on ensuring safety and viability of our nuclear fleet. I'm a long-term supporter of nuclear energy because it's a cleaner energy alternative. The President has said he supports investments in alternative forms of energy, and Secretary Chu has testified before this committee that we would be unable to meet the President's goals if we did not continue to invest in nuclear energy. With that, there's no doubt, though, that the issue of long-term and interim nuclear storage facility disposal needs to be dealt with, and I do hope the Commission will seriously look at this issue in the near future. But again, thank each of you for being here. My hope is that today starts a new chapter in our committee's relationship to the NRC, and I wish you all the luck in turning over a new leaf. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield the balance of my time to our ranking member of our full committee, Mr. Waxman.
Thank you very much for yielding to me. I also want to begin by welcoming Dr. Allison McFarland and the other members of the Commission. I look forward to your testimony on the safety and security of America's nuclear power plants. The mission of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is to license and regulate the nation's civilian use of nuclear materials to, quote, ensure adequate protection of public health and safety, promote the common defense and security, and protect the environment, end quote. This is a vital mission, but for the last year and a half, the Commission has been distracted from its responsibilities by politicians who second-guessed its decisions and sowed internal dissension. Regrettably, this committee helped fan the flames of discord within the Commission by looking for any opportunity to cast aspersions on the former chairman. It is time to move on. With the four commissioners here today and the new chairman, we should focus on examining important nuclear safety issues, not rehashing old grudges. There's no shortage of issues to discuss, from the ongoing shutdown of the San Onofre nuclear generating station in California due to safety concerns, to the status of NRC's post-Fukushima review of nuclear power plant safety in the United States. It's been more than a year since the Fukushima nuclear accident in Japan. Japan's independent commission investigating the events leading up to the disaster recently concluded that the power plant operator and Japan's nuclear regulators failed to implement basic safety measures despite known risks posed by earthquakes, tsunamis, and other events that can cause long-term blackouts at reactors. This is a cautionary tale for the United States, one that NRC should heed when implementing lessons learned from the Fukushima disaster. I look forward to the hearing. I thank the gentleman for yielding to me, and I yield back the time to Mr. Green, should he wish to use it.
Mr. Chairman, unless another member on our side wants the remainder of the minute, no one, I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back time. Chair recognizes the chairman of the Energy Subcommittee, Mr. Whitfield, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to welcome the commissioners from the NRC today and tell all of you how much we appreciate the important work that you do. We're all optimistic and hopeful that Chairwoman McFarland will make great improvements to and restore the collegiality at the Commission, and we know that she has an impressive background in this area and look forward to working with her. All of us watched closely the events that surrounded the Fukushima situation, and when the Japanese Diet's Nuclear Accident Independent Investigation Commission reported that if Fukushima had been required to implement, for example, the B-5B order issued by the NRC following the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the U.S., that accident may have been preventable. That same report also observed that Japanese plants were not required to consider a possible station blackout scenario, something that the NRC instituted in the 1980s. And last year, the NRC's task force concluded that events like the Fukushima accident are unlikely to occur in the United States, and that continued operation and licensing activities do not pose an imminent risk to public health and safety. We all were encouraged by that, and I know that on March 9th of this year, the NRC issued a series of orders without a rigorous cost-benefit analysis. I understand it was the Commission's collective judgment to proceed in that fashion due to the urgency of those high-priority issues, and I don't think any of us disagree with that. But moving forward with the complicated and complex issues that you deal with, we do know and that you will be striving, and we hope that you will strive for a solid technical basis and rigorous cost-benefit analysis on any decision that is made. But once again, we look forward to your testimony and look forward to the opportunity to ask questions, and thank you for joining us. And I would yield the balance of my time to the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Upton.
Thank you, and I thank both of you for holding this important and very timely hearing. I'm pleased for the opportunity to personally relay the concerns that folks in Southwest Michigan have regarding recent news reports of degraded performance of the Palisade nuclear plant in my district. I share those concerns and have raised them with Entergy officials. I understand that they've made many management changes and have very detailed plans about how to restore their facility to the high level of safety that every one of us expect. And while I'm encouraged by their commitment to resolve the situation, I will continue to monitor the situation closely, working directly with the company as well as the NRC, and I look forward to asking questions of the Commission on that issue. With regard to governance, Congress recognized in 1974 that one person should not be able to dictate what constitutes nuclear safety. They gave that responsibility to a commission of 5 people to consider complex issues collegially in a manner that maximizes the benefit of nuclear technology while protecting the public. Collegiality is not just a buzzword, it is a critical safeguard against ill-considered policymaking by any single commission member. Following the 3 Mile Island accident, Congress passed the Reorganization Plan of 1980 to address organizational weaknesses and clarify lines of authority. The Reorganization Plan shifted a certain amount of authority from the Commission to the Chairman, and while that approach served the nation well for nearly 30 years, we have now witnessed how one person intent on expanding the limits of his authority can undermine the Commission's effectiveness. I am relieved that the Yatsko era is officially behind us, but flaws have been exposed at the Commission that still need to be addressed. As we've learned through our investigations and 2 IG reports, just a few of the former chairman's actions include repeated attempts to influence or withheld agency staff information from the Commission, intimidation and bullying of commissioners and agency professionals, creating a chilled work environment, and use of the Public Affairs Office to denigrate his colleagues and politicize and pressure Commission policy positions. In all my years on this committee, I have never witnessed a situation like that during the past 3 years at the NRC. Last year, 4 commissioners took the unprecedented step of privately alerting the White House Chief of Staff to the untenable situation. Sadly, the President's response was to turn a blind eye while the 4 eminently qualified commissioners, whom he nominated, were all vilified by Chairman Yatsko's allies when their concerns became public. We must ensure that history never repeats itself. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. And again, I would welcome the commission members, and it's my understanding that Chairman will offer the opening statement for, I'm sorry, Bob. Without objection, I'd like to recognize the ranking member of the Energy Subcommittee. I didn't know there was any other subcommittees other than mine, Bobby, for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank, again, all the NRC commissioners for your attendance here today. You certainly deserve all the accolades that we can give to you because of the hard work that you do and have continued to do, even under the former chairman. And I'm saying that, Dr. McFarland, I really want to thank you for being here, and I want to welcome you we look forward to your insightful and vigorous leadership. And we know that the genius is yet to appear, but it is here present with us. And so I am so delighted that you are here before this committee and that you are the chairman of the NRC. So welcome. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to hearing your vision for the agency moving forward. And I look forward to hearing how you plan to work in concert with your fellow commissioners to ensure that the agency is conducting its work smoothly and without interruption. Mr. Chairman, with Illinois, our state, housing more nuclear reactors than any other state in the country, my constituents and yours want to be assured that the NRC has in place common sense protocols for both mitigating risk of a nuclear disaster as well as procedures to safeguard the public in the event that a disaster occurs. Specifically, I look forward to hearing more about the steps that the Commission has put in place to improve safety based on the huge amount of information we have learned following the events at Fukushima. It has now been over 16 months since the horrific disaster of last March. And in the past 12 months, there have been 7 major reports on Fukushima, as well as numerous international IAEA and other international studies on the events that took place at Fukushima. The 30-plus NRC actions that were initially approved by the agency were based on a report that was drafted within 3 months of the Fukushima events and before any root cause or detailed timeline of events had been made public. And I'm curious to know if the agency has assessed the list of NRC actions against the vast array of information to ensure that the NRC staff and, more importantly, the industry are focused on the issues that were the cause and that are safety significant. Mr. Chairman, while I believe nuclear power must be a vital part of our country's overall energy portfolio, we must ensure that we have the best systems and practices in place to safeguard against an unforeseen nuclear accident to prevent widespread disaster like what we witnessed last March in Japan. My constituents in the 1st District and in Illinois, as well as the larger American public, expect us to address these pressing issues, so I look forward to hearing from the commissioners today. One other matter, Mr. Chairman, on another significant note, I also look forward to hearing more about the NRC's work in supporting the engineering departments of HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, as reported in the magazine U.S. Black Engineer and Information Technology. Supporting STEM education is a top priority for me, and the NRC was recognized as one of the government agencies considered most supportive of the engineering departments of HBCUs, and I'd like to hear more about your work in that particular area. So I look forward to hearing more about this work, more in depth about all of your activities. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I yield back 9 seconds.
The chair welcomes the ranking member for those 9 seconds. And now I'd like to recognize the Chairman McFarland, your full statements in the record for the commission, and then you are recognized for 5 minutes, and we'll be very generous, so don't feel rushed. And then I think it's our understanding that we'll give the other members of the commission an opportunity for 5 minutes for an opening statement. With that, the chair recognizes the chairman of the NRC, the Honorable McFarland.
Thank you very much. Chairman Whitfield and Shinkus, ranking members Rush and Green, and members of the subcommittees, I'm honored to be here before you today in my first congressional appearance as chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I'm pleased to join my fellow commissioners to discuss the critical policy issues facing our agency. I've had the opportunity and privilege to begin working with Commissioners Savinicki, Apostolakis, Magwood, and Ostendorf. They are all talented professionals with a rich and diverse set of experiences. I'm looking forward to collaborating with them and forming a collegial relationship in service to the country and the mission of the agency. I'd like to take a moment to address my leadership style and the approach I will take as chairman. I've already begun to reach out to my fellow commissioners to lay the groundwork for a strong working relationship, and I look forward to seeking and receiving their advice on consequential matters facing the agency. I am committed to maintaining open lines of communication and a respect for their views and best judgment. I believe that by working together collegially, the product of our efforts as a commission will be stronger and more protective of the public interest. To execute their responsibilities effectively, my colleagues must have access to unfettered and timely information, and I will ensure that they are fully and currently informed. One of my responsibilities is to ensure that the Commission's policy direction is being carried out in the most effective and efficient manner to support the mission. While the commitment and capability of the Executive Director of Operations and his senior management team is impressive, the Chairman must be in the position to monitor staff performance and verify that mission responsibilities are being met effectively. I look forward to working with the EDO to find the right balance between our respective roles. Finally, I embrace the NRC's organizational values that are intended to guide every action taken by agency personnel. These values are integrity, service, openness, commitment, cooperation, excellence, and respect. I support the commitment to an open, collaborative work environment that encourages all employees and contractors to promptly speak up and share concerns and differing views without fear of negative consequences. I believe these values are worthy of highlighting as we reinforce our agency's focus on its critical mission of safeguarding the public's health, safety, and security and protecting the environment. This is especially valuable at a time when the agency is dealing with a wide array of critical safety matters. We continue to focus on implementing the important lessons learned from the Fukushima Daiichi accident. The NRC continues to believe that our nation's nuclear fleet is safe and not facing imminent risk from a similar accident. However, the Fukushima disaster clearly offers lessons to be learned. I look forward in this context to working with my colleagues to establish safety measures derived from the recommendations by the NRC Near-Term Task Force. The staff has prioritized these recommendations into 3 tiers. In March, the Commission approved the first tier of actions for the staff to issue as immediately enforceable orders. We also issued requests for information to our licensees to help inform the staff as we proceed in developing the tiers 2 and 3 measures. This is a substantial amount of progress in a short time, and the Commission looks forward to continuing to work with the staff to address remaining Fukushima-related lessons. In addition, the NRC has made significant strides in several other areas this year. We issued the first 2 new reactor licenses in over 30 years, the Vogtle site in Georgia and the Summer site in South Carolina. We also authorized a new design certification for the AP1000 reactor, 4 new uranium recovery licenses, and a license for the Areva Eagle Rock Centrifuge Enrichment Facility. We anticipate more applications and decisions being made in the next few years in all these areas. With all these new developments, the NRC continues its responsibility for making the safety and security of our current operating nuclear fleet by performing thousands of hours of inspections at plants and materials sites. On the whole, our nation's nuclear power plants have performed well, and where issues have arisen, the agency has moved expeditiously to resolve any problems. We are always working to bring transparency to our operations and maintain strong relationships with our stakeholders and the public. It is these accomplishments that demonstrate time and again the level of professionalism among the NRC staff. I am proud to be a part of this agency, and I look forward to working with my fellow commissioners and the staff in the coming months. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before you today. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Right on the button on 5 minutes, so you were well prepared. So That's a good first start. The chair now recognizes the Commissioner Savinicki. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Shimkus, Ranking Member Green, Chairman Whitfield, Ranking Member Rush, and members of the subcommittees for the opportunity to appear before you today at this oversight hearing to examine NRC policy and governance. I would like to begin by recognizing the early commitment of the Commission's new chairman, Dr. Allison McFarland, to forge a collegial relationship with each member of the Commission, which began even prior to her swearing in earlier this month and has continued since that time. I'm appreciative of her reaching out to me, our fellow commissioners, and members of the NRC senior executive service and staff. The tone she is setting is constructive and is a most welcomed opportunity to move forward in a positive manner. Having joined the Commission in March of 2008, I arrived at an agency whose regulatory program is regarded as among the most informed and disciplined in the world. I am grateful to President Obama for having nominated me this year to serve a second term on the Commission. Having been confirmed just last month, I continue to pledge my efforts to advance the NRC's important work during this new term of service. The tragic events in Japan in 2011 cast the NRC's work into even sharper relief for the American public. Nuclear technology is unique, and its use demands an unwavering commitment to safety principles. This past March, the NRC issued a series of orders to nuclear power plant licensees requiring features to mitigate beyond design basis extreme natural events, the installation of hardened venting systems at some plants, and enhanced spent fuel pool instrumentation. The NRC is also requiring nuclear power plant licensees to undertake substantial reevaluations of seismic and flooding hazards at their sites. The NRC continues to develop and communicate the specific guidance for implementing these actions with input from nuclear operators, nuclear safety and environmental interest groups, and other members of the public. This work is carried out through the committed efforts of the women and men of the NRC in advancing the NRC's mission of ensuring adequate protection of public health and safety and promoting the common defense and security. I would like to convey publicly my gratitude to the NRC staff for the work they do and for assisting my efforts to advance our shared goals. Chairman Whitfield, Ranking Member Rush, Chairman Shimkus, Ranking Member Green, and members of the subcommittees, I appreciate the opportunity to appear today and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Commissioner Magwood, sir, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Whitfield and Shimkus, Ranking Members Rush and Green, members of the subcommittees, it's a pleasure to be before you today to discuss the work of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. During the 2.5 years I've served on this commission, we've been faced with historic challenges and significant change. We have authorized U.S. electric utilities to begin construction of the first new nuclear power plants since the 1970s. We've also licensed the construction and operation of the first uranium enrichment facilities in this country not constructed by the government. At the same time, we've also seen troubling errors in the application of radioactive sources for medical treatment at the Philadelphia Veterans Affairs Medical Center. And in the last year, we responded as nuclear power plants were rocked by earthquakes, threatened by floodwaters, buffeted by hurricanes and tornadoes. In a very real sense, the key attribute of a safety regulator is the ability to process experience into learning and learning into action. All these events and many others provide us lessons that must be learned and applied to make us a better regulator. Fortunately, in my experience, the NRC has proven to be extraordinary in its ability to learn from experience and find practical ways of assuring safety. For this current commission, the greatest challenges we face arise from the urgent need to continue to learn from the lessons of the tragedy in Japan at the Fukushima Daiichi plant. The Commission has already unanimously approved a set of high-priority initiatives that are designed to enhance defense in depth at U.S. plants and enable operators to respond more effectively to beyond design bases of events. We still have much work to do, but the steps taken thus far represent a very significant increase in the safety based on the Fukushima experience. While the technical and regulatory lessons are important, it's my observation that the greatest lesson that Fukushima holds for any safety regulator is the fleeting nature of credibility. A regulator loses credibility and public trust as a regulator that has failed in its mission. If a regulator is not seen as truthful, credible, and reliable, with a clearer focus on the health and safety of the public, it cannot function, nor can the nuclear facilities under its oversight. Those who question this need only observe the tens of thousands of Japanese citizens who marched in Tokyo this past weekend. It's in that respect I welcome Chairman McFarland to this commission. I look forward to working with her to assure that the NRC continues its long tradition of technical excellence, veracity, and credibility. In the very short time she's been with us, I believe she's off to an excellent start. This commission and the agency as a whole will face many difficult and impactful decisions in the coming weeks and months. It does not overstate the merit to tell you that these decisions could determine the future shape of nuclear regulation in this country for many years to come. I look forward to working with my colleagues on the Commission, our many stakeholders, and with your subcommittees as we address the challenges ahead. I look forward to today's discussion and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Olstendorf, and before that, it's important for me to use the bully pulpit to make sure that I put on record beat Navy. We have priorities here in this country, and that Army-Navy rivalry is one of the biggest. So before you start, beat Navy, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman, I must call to your attention the record of the past decade. But but I have a son who served as an Army officer, did 2 combat tours in Iraq, and was there in a very busy time period, so I have a very soft spot in my heart for the Army. Chairman Shimkus, Ranking Member Green, Chairman Whitfield, Ranking Member Rush, members of the committee, I appreciate the chance to be here before you today. It's been a little bit over a year since I had the opportunity to appear before this committee. Last July, the NRC Fukushima Task Force concluded that a sequence of events in the United States similar to that experienced in Japan is unlikely. The task force also significantly concluded that there is no imminent risk from continued operation of U.S. nuclear power plants. I firmly believe those conclusions offered in July of last year remain true and solid today. Nevertheless, I continue to support the NRC in its efforts to strengthen our regulatory framework where appropriate in response to Fukushima. Along with my colleagues at this table, I commend the NRC's dedicated staff of professionals. I also appreciate the work of my colleagues at this table. Earlier this year, along with my other colleagues, I voted to approve the issuance of 3 orders associated with Fukushima actions. Orders related to accident mitigation strategies, containment vent systems, and spent fuel pool instrumentation based on lessons learned from Fukushima. I continue to support the information gathering and analysis necessary to take additional actions as appropriate to enhance safety. We need to continue to pursue these efforts in a prioritized, thoughtful manner. But even as we dedicate resources to implementing the recommendations and lessons learned from Fukushima, the Commission and our staff continues to be successful in performing our other vital work. Effective safety oversight of reactor materials licensees remains our preeminent goal. As mentioned by colleagues to my right, earlier this year in February and March, we issued the first new reactor licenses for construction operations at the Vogtle and Summer plants. I note that the additional Fukushima-related requirements that came from the Commission were imposed in these new construction reactors. I had the chance to witness the construction of these 2 sites just 2 weeks ago, and I'm encouraged by the progress that I saw. Finally, I join my colleagues in warmly welcoming Dr. McFarland to the Commission. I fully expect that the collegiality and effectiveness of the Commission will benefit from her new leadership. And I state with great confidence today that she is off to a very strong start as chairman. I appreciate this committee's oversight role. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I recognize myself for 5 minutes for the first opening round of questions. This is to the Commission as a whole. My district is home to Honeywell's uranium conversion plant. It's the only one of its kind in the U.S. This past May, the NRC reconfirmed as part of a performance review that the plant is operating safely. 2 months later, Honeywell is in the process of laying off 228 employees due to a prolonged shutdown to address recently discovered seismic issues. I am concerned for both the safety of the nearby residents, but also for the livelihoods of those employees. What I am struggling to understand is this. Was the NRC correct in May when they indicated the plant is safe? If so, then shouldn't there be a way to make safety improvements while minimizing the disruption to the plant's operation and the lives of the employees? Chairman?
Thank you for that question, Chairman. You'll have to bear with me. I've been on the job 2 weeks, and I'm struggling to understand all of the different issues that are before us, but I am familiar with the Honeywell issue. And I'm familiar with the fact that the order, the confirmatory action letter that was issued to the Honeywell plant came out of Fukushima-related inspections. And that's my current understanding of the situation. So it was perhaps separate from what you're talking about.
Commissioner Svinicki.
Chairman, as Chairman McFarland indicated, the NRC did order some additional in-depth inspections at facilities, including fuel cycle facilities at Honeywell, after the events in Fukushima. As a result of that, there were indications that the amount of material that could hypothetically be released in a seismic event had been underestimated previously, and that is under further analysis by both Honeywell as the operator and the NRC staff at this time. There is the potential for facility modifications to be needed, and my understanding is that the issue of what measures might be needed is under very active analysis right now.
So just a brief follow-up. So you're saying that the May analysis may not have been correct, and you're not attributing that to Fukushima changes?
My understanding is that the situation that the facility is in right now is an outgrowth of the more in-depth Fukushima-related inspection, but it is against the current design basis of the facility. The question of whether or not this could have been discovered previously is a very complex one, Congressman, and I think we owe you, as we complete our analysis, a further answer on that. And
more of the 228 employees who are no longer have employment right now. Commissioner Magwood?
Yeah, I think both of my colleagues have given you a very good summary of the situation. The only thing I would add is that a portion of the difficulty we face with the Honeywell facility is that it's a very old facility that actually predates some of our regulatory structure. And while we believe that, while we have a lot of certainty that it's being operated safely, some of the criteria that one might apply today were not available when this plant was first built. So, for example, there are no criteria guiding whether the buildings housing the process facility should have any earthquake resistance, for example. We don't have that requirement in place for this facility. But what we do have in place is a requirement that in the event of a credible accident, that the public be protected. And as Commissioner Svinicki pointed out, in the analysis to decide whether the public's protected, you have to make an assumption as to how much material could possibly be released. And that appears to have been an error made in the process to determine how much could have been released. We now believe much more could be released than had been previously assumed, and that's why this change has been.
Yeah, let me reclaim my time, and just because I've got three and I'm only going to get one question in. So let me go to a quote by you, Commissioner Magwood, that said, "It does not, as a general matter, advance the cause of safety to inundate licensee staff with multiple actions when a more thoughtful process might achieve the agency's safety goals without straining licensee resources." And this is the issue about the additional work, time, effort, and energy that might take people off the prize of the real concerns on safety versus. What are your comments to that? Not just, go ahead, that's your comment, Commissioner. Why don't you follow up on that?
Well, just very briefly, give others a chance to comment. My belief is that it's very important that whenever we take a regulatory action that it be done in a prioritized fashion. Obviously, every facility is very different, and we should have an approach that recognizes that what may be a threat to one facility may be a much lesser threat to a second facility. And then as we're approaching our regulatory implementation, we ought to take that into consideration.
Does everyone generally agree with that analysis? And I see everyone shaking their head yes, and we appreciate that. With that, my time's expired. Chair recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On June the 8th, the U.S. Court of Appeals and D.C. Circuit Court called NRC's evaluation of the risk of spent nuclear fuel deficient, noting the commission that I examined the environmental impacts of failing to license a permanent repository or environmental risk. The court instructed NRC to perform a detailed evaluation and possible risk posed by the extent of storage pools in reactor sites such as leaks and fires, or explain why such an evaluation is not needed. When do you plan to start this evaluation, and what do you expect it to look like?
We are in the process of considering various options of what to do with waste confidence decisions right now, and these options are being vetted, and I can't say more because the issue is an active adjudicatory matter.
Do you have any idea on a time frame?
We're going to be working part of this right now, immediately.
Okay. On June the 18th, the NRC received a petition to suspend final decisions on all pending reactor licensing proceedings, pending revisions to be remanded about the waste confidence rule. In its response, NRC stated the Commission staff agrees that no final decision is to be granted a combined license, operating license, or renewed operating license be made until the NRC has appropriately disposed of the issues remanded by court. Is it true that you will not make any final decisions on a license until you've addressed the problems with the waste confidence rule?
Again, I believe this is an adjudicatory matter, and we can't say more until we've taken a vote.
In the 16 months since the nuclear accidents in Japan, there's been a vast amount of information published about the event that causes the action taken by the global nuclear energy industry. With the benefit of this information, have your initial conclusions on the cause of accidents or the priority of the regulatory actions associated with Fukushima changed?
Congressman Green, the NRC staff remains very cognizant of those international reports as they're issued, and they do have the potential to further inform our response in the United States to Fukushima. So I would characterize to you that we stay very engaged in reviewing those results and want to have the most risk-informed process that we can to respond to Fukushima going forward.
You know, our concern is we want to make sure if it's a terrible tragedy in Japan, we just want to make sure we don't reinvent the wheel, that we see what the problem was there. You issued 3 orders and a request for information on flooding, seismic, and emergency preparedness in March. Based on the information that's available in the past 12 months, are there any other areas where orders may be necessary?
I believe this is to be decided. We are working through the different tier activities, and as we get to Tier 2 and Tier 3 activities, we may decide on new orders. I invite my colleagues to comment.
I would just add that the orders that you described were considered by the Commission and the NRC staff to be those that provided the greatest potential for risk reduction, so they were the highest priority items.
I'd like to add, Congressman, that to echo Commissioner Svenike's comments, that not all of these recommendations from the task force are of equal safety significance. There's some that are more urgent, some less urgent, and some that still need to be studied. And I think I'll just tell you from where we sit a year and 4 months after Fukushima, I think the thoughtful, prioritized approach that the agency has taken as a result of the staff's recommendations has been very supportive of safety.
So there are other orders being looked at, just not the higher priority that these 3 orders. Is that correct? If you'll say yes, so the mic can pick it up.
Well, I'd say that we're still reviewing. There's, as Chairman McFarland mentioned, there's a Tier 1 set of issues, the highest priority. We're still evaluating recommendations on Tier 2 and Tier 3.
There are a number of recent reports and articles critical of the Japanese nuclear industry and government emergency preparedness plans and activities. Are there differences between our regulatory requirements and those of Japan with respect to emergency preparedness and those of Japan?
Yes, actually, there are very significant differences in our approaches. For example, in the United States, each nuclear plant is required to perform a full-scale emergency planning exercise once every 2 years. That requirement doesn't exist in Japan, and so we practice emergency planning very rigorously, and it's a very important part of our defense in depth. And I think this is something that in Japan they're giving a lot of careful thought to today.
Mr. Chairman, I know I'm almost out of time. A number of support expansion of nuclear power. There's lots of things in the market, low-price natural gas, lots of other issues. But if we're going to deal with long-term, we need to have some transparency, which the chair talked about, but also some guidelines so the industry can have some certainty to make sure they go forward. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair now recognizes the chairman of the Energy Subcommittee, Mr. Whitfield, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your testimony. As you know, the U.S. is still struggling to rebuild its economy and to lower unemployment, and energy is always a key component in our ability to compete in the global marketplace. And of course, cost is a factor that we always look at of the cost of producing energy. Regulations certainly affect cost. And I talked about in my opening statement how the Japanese diets investigation really was quite complementary of the U.S. Regulatory system, because we had put in place certain safety safeguards that certainly Japan did not have. And as Mr. Ostendorf mentioned, you all adopted 3 emergency orders last summer. And it's my understanding that it's not required that you do a cost-benefit analysis, and it's not required that you do some sort of a technical basis rationalization for the decision. And I'm assuming that in those 3 orders, there was not a cost-benefit analysis or a technical analysis. Is that correct?
That's correct. The 2 of them were deemed adequate protection issues, and 1 was given an exemption.
Two were, I'm sorry?
Deemed adequate protection issues.
Okay.
I'll let my colleagues expand on that.
Well, then, Chairman McFarland and each of the commissioners, let me ask this question. I know you're looking at different tiers now, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, and there may be additional orders for post-Fukushima safety improvements. Do you believe that any future post-Fukushima actions it would be beneficial to have a rigorous technical basis and a cost-benefit analysis?
I believe we have to consider all potential actions on their own merits as they come through, and we'll decide at that time whether they are an adequate protection issue or not. And you know, it depends. There's a lot of information we need to gather and examine about each of these different issues in the different tiers.
Ms. Savinsky, do you?
Chairman Whitfield, I don't disagree with Chairman McFarland that we will, of course, assess these. Each regulatory action will be assessed based on the circumstances. But as a general matter, in a number of my votes on the NRC's post-Fukushima actions, I have indicated that after the highest priority potential risk reductions are taken, such as the 3 orders we just issued, that it's my personal view that we need to begin to return to the disciplined cost-benefit analysis, because the subsequent and follow-on actions will likely not have the potential to achieve as significant of a risk reduction. Therefore, I believe moving back into our backfit rule and our cost-benefit evaluation is appropriate for that reason.
Mr. Magwood?
To some degree, I agree with both of my colleagues on this, because I do think that most of the actions that may follow should undergo a more rigorous analysis. But I also think that there may be some actions that are in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 category that are adequate protection issues and not to go through that evaluation. So I agree with Chairman McFarland's statement that we should look at each one on an individual basis and make a judgment as we go.
Yeah. Mr. Ostendorf?
Chairman Whitfield, I just add that I think the commission members here at this table that have been voting these matters, my 2 colleagues to the right, and Commissioner Apostolakis, who's not here, have very clearly stated in our voting record on Fukushima issues that we need a technical analysis to underpin any recommendations for taking action. And I think our staff has done that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair now recognizes my colleague from Illinois, Mr. Rush, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Chairman, back in May, my office was notified that the NRC was recently honored by the U.S. Black Engineering and Information Technology magazines as one of the government agencies considered most supportive of the engineering departments of historically black colleges and universities. The survey was the result of a poll among deans of accredited HBCU engineering programs and the Corporate Academic Alliance Advancing Minority Interest in Engineering, which is its name, the Alliance's name. Supporting STEM education, especially for minorities and women, is one of my top educational priorities. And I would like to hear more about some of the programs that the NRC has been involved in this particular area. So I would ask if any of you could discuss some of the agency's work in supporting the HBCU's engineering program, and can my office be of assistance, and how can we be of assistance, both, especially in the areas of recruiting and in STEM areas. We know that future scientists and engineers of tomorrow, a lot of them could and should come from HBCUs. So just take a moment. I'm aware of the time, and I do have some other questions. So please be as brief as possibly can.
Let me just say that in fiscal year 2011, the Minority Servicing Institutions Grants Program issued 26 grants, of which 15 were awarded to historically black colleges and universities and totaled over $1 million. And the program funded approximately $737,000 in stipends through the Research Participation Program. And as you noted, that the NRC has been recognized as a top supporter based on a survey of deans from engineering schools for 4 consecutive years.
Would you send myself, my office, and anyone else on the either committee, subcommittee, the information in writing on
Absolutely. Happy to.
All right. Thank you very much. In the 16 months since the nuclear accidents in Japan, there's been a vast amount of information published about the event, the causes and actions taken by the global nuclear industry. With the benefit of this information, have your initial conclusions on the cause of the accidents or on the priority of the regulatory actions associated with Fukushima, has these changed? What are the top 5 most important actions being taken by the NRC staff and industry to improve safety based on the huge amount of information surrounding Fukushima?
Well, we've issued 3 orders, and as well as some requests for information from our licensees. Those are the first actions that the NRC has done, and now we are working through Tier 2 and Tier 3 activities.
The 30-plus NRC actions that were approved by the NRC were based on a report that was drafted within 3 months of the accidents and before any root cause or detailed timeline of events had been made public. Have you assessed the list of NRC actions against this vast array of information to ensure that the NRC staff and the industry are focused on issues that were the cause and that are safety significant?
The staff is working very hard to understand all the full suite of information available out there. They're keeping abreast of it and keeping up with their colleagues in other countries, and I invite my other colleagues to comment as well.
I would add, Chairman Rush, Ranking Member Rush, that I'm going to simplify this a little bit. I think there's 2 main categories of Tier 1 actions that our staff has been working diligently to look at. One is the protection against external events, such as a seismic event or flooding. And the second is, what are the mitigation strategies if you have an accident? For instance, if you have a loss of all power on site. So those 2 high-level mitigation strategies and protection against external events, I think, are the top 2 categories of all the myriad recommendations that came out of the task force. And those are the ones that are getting the highest priority.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Chairman
of the full committee, Mr. Upton, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to just reiterate to Chair McFarland, I do welcome some of your comments on your new role, and I look forward to sitting down with you and getting to know you certainly a lot better in the weeks and months ahead, and ensuring that we have a solid relationship. You have a very important job, and we want to make sure that you have the resources to do your job and you do it in a very efficient way, and we're all pulling for you. Commissioner Ossendorf, as you know, the Palisades plant in my district is in column 3 of the NRC's reactor oversight program. Would you briefly describe for us what that means and what actions the NRC generally takes for plants in that column?
Yes, sir. We have a reactor oversight process that goes from column 1, which is the best operating plant, all the way down to column 5, which is the worst operating plant status. And as you go, as a plant has more problems, there's increased oversight that occurs by the NRC staff at that plant. Currently, Palisades is in column 3, which is basically a result of a substantial safety significance finding dealing with inadequate work instructions associated with DC power supplies that led to a reactor scram or reactor trip. That was also accompanied by what's called a wide inspection finding of low to moderate safety significance that was associated with a service water pump coupling failure. As a result of those 2 items, Palisades is in this column 3. It's the degraded cornerstone column. There's increased oversight. We expect our NRC team to be looking with the licensee at their corrective action program and the licensee's assessment of where their problems are. And we expect the next NRC close look at this to be coming sometime probably in September of this year.
So is it your understanding and belief that Entergy and the owners, the operators of this facility, that they're taking all the right actions at this point?
I think the final determination of that, Congressman, remains to be seen. I think so far Entergy has been communicating well with the NRC staff about what they are doing. Entergy on their own commissioned an external group to come in and do a safety culture assessment earlier this year. That's been reviewed by the NRC staff. The follow-on inspection in September will look at those details of the safety culture assessment.
So in September, you'll review all this information, and at that point, would it be possible to make a determination to move them back to column 2 or not?
We go through an annual assessment process led by our Executive Director for Operations, Bill Borchert, and Bill's in the back row behind us here. And that's on an annual cycle that goes through. I'm not sure what exactly the cycle is, but typically those determinations are made in the spring, early summer time period. So I can't tell you exactly when a determination might be made as to whether or not that plant should or should not remain in column 3.
So, and you'll literally have that information. You'll be ready to make that determination come September.
Well, there'll be a certain aspect that'll be looked at in September. This is the safety culture aspects that are believed to be part of the root cause of some of the concerns of that plant.
And you'll be sharing that with us, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
And is that early? Last question. Is that early September?
I don't have a specific date for that. We can get back to you if we have some more information on that.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair now recognizes the Chairman Emeritus, Mr. Dingell, for 5 minutes.
Thank you for your courtesy. These questions to Chairman McFarland. Madam Chairman, I've heard concerns related to the Part 52 licensing process for new facilities. It's my understanding that this process is intended to provide both a construction and an operating license through the same review, and to streamline the previous Part 50 process. When the first round of Part 52 license applications came into the NRC in 2007 and 8, the stated goal by NRC was to complete these reviews in 36 months. Since that time, the time has been raised to 42 to 48 months, and now it seems that many are headed for a 60-month review. This is occurring even as there are less applications in the review pipeline. My question to you, Madam Chairman, is the NRC committed to completing these reviews in an expedited manner, yes or no?
The NRC is committed to completing these reviews in as efficiently as possible.
Thank you. Now, there has been frustration on the slowness of the relicensing process. Is the NRC committed to complete these relicensing reviews in an expedited manner? Please answer yes or no.
The NRC is committed to completing these relicensing reviews as efficiently as possible.
Thank you. Now, Madam Chairman, you were a member of the Blue Ribbon Commission that recommended working with the communities who might volunteer for a single waste storage site. How long would such a process take to finalize?
It is totally uncertain. It could take a few years or it could take decades. It entirely depends on the situation.
I'm very little comforted, but I think that's a fair answer. Madam Chairman, can you tell us what would be the cost of this exercise?
The costs of working with a community?
Yes.
It entirely depends.
To finalize the process.
Again, it entirely depends. And it depends also in part on how much compensation is decided for the community and in what form that compensation would be.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Now, under current law, how many sites are authorized to be evaluated and licensed as a single storage site?
One.
One. Now, does the NRC currently have the funding to move forward to evaluate and license the Yucca Mountain facility? Yes or no?
My understanding is that there is some funding available.
I'm sorry?
Complete the license. My understanding is there is some funding available to complete the license review.
Enough to complete the action?
That I am not completely certain, and I would invite my colleagues to.
Could you give us an answer for the record later, or
yes, certainly, absolutely.
All right, if you please. Now, in the audience today, I have constituents of mine who are studying nuclear science at the University of Michigan, which is an institution I have the honor of representing. In its fiscal year 2013 budget request, NRC stated that it is not requesting funding for the Integrated University Program, which historically has been the sole provider of critical funding for both student and faculty development in the field of nuclear science. NRC states that this reflects the confidence that the nuclear industry will create incentives for students to enter nuclear-related programs. Now, I have constantly watched the development of our technical, scientific, and engineering people. And I've always found that we are lagging a lot of other people around the world. I had two boys who were metallurgical engineers. We found that we are developing approximately 11 metallurgical engineers. The Chinese are developing about 11,000. Do you believe that there is a need to train nuclear engineers in this country? And do you support the NRC's role in the IUP? Yes or no?
Excuse me, in
the IUP.
Right. Certainly, as a scientist myself, I support education in science and engineering, and I think that the NRC Commission also supports this strongly.
If you withdraw from this, however, I must assume that there will be no federal money for this kind of exercise, and that we will not be training the scientists, engineers, et cetera, that we will need in this area. Are we going to produce the scientists, engineers, and technicians that we need if we withdraw and if the NRC withdraws, or are we not?
Go ahead and finish. Yes, ma'am.
I would leave some of the funding of science and engineering education to you all.
My time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got my serious doubts that we will be doing so.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes another Chairman Emeritus, Mr. Barton, for 5 minutes.
Well, there's only really one, and that's Mr. Dingle. I'm glad to be in the same sentence with him. We're glad to have our new chairman of the NRC.
This business of being chairman emeritus sounds mighty good, but it really ain't much. and
If the gentleman would yield to my colleagues who are in the lower levels waiting to ask questions, I still think it's very valuable.
Well, I tend to echo Mr. Dingle. Take that and 50 cents, and in Texas you get a Dr. Pepper. So, but it's good to be on the committee regardless of what the titles are. Chairman McFarland, we're certainly glad to have you, and I noticed that the previous questioners have all been unbelievably polite, which is somewhat unusual for this committee, but not unique. I'd like to go into waters that are a little bit murkier. Your predecessor was not known for his collegiality with his fellow commissioners. In fact, there were some fairly rigorous attempts on his behalf to withhold information and to manipulate the decision-making process. Would you care to give us your view on how you plan to manage the decision-making process and the information gathering and dissemination at the commission?
Surely. I am committed to being as collegial as possible. I regard my fellow commissioners as my peer equals, and as such, I think they should have access to all the information I have access to. I am committed to sharing with them written information from my office, and I've directed my staff as well to be as open with their staffs.
So you don't intend to use your position as chairman to withhold and in some ways shape the outcome of decisions. You plan to use the position to gather, but to share on an equal basis whatever information comes to you as chairman. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment. I believe that the intention of the commission with 5 commissioners is to act together. We certainly will not agree on every issue, but that is not the intention of the commission.
Okay. Now, some of the members may have asked a storage question, but there is an obvious, I don't want to say elephant in the room because that has political overtones, but there is a big issue that is not being addressed, and that's permanent high-level waste storage. I would say a majority of our committee feels that it would be appropriate to move forward at Yucca Mountain. There are members of the committee that would prefer, of our committee, the Energy Committee, that we not. Do you have a view that you want to express about how to assess what to do at Yucca Mountain?
About how to assess what to do at Yucca Mountain? No, at this point I do not. I will wait to see what issues are presented to us as a commission.
That's fair enough for the first time you're here. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back his time. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Waxman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There are 2 nuclear power plants in California. One is Diablo Canyon in Ms. Capp's district. The other is the San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station near San Diego. And I'd like to ask some questions about the San Onofre plant. In February 2011, new steam generators were placed in service at that plant. This was a major capital expense. The project cost California ratepayers $670 million. This expense was large, but the new equipment was supposed to last 40 years. But on January 31 of this year, less than a year after generators were put in place, a tube in one of the unit's steam generators started leaking radioactive steam into the atmosphere. An alarm sounded, the reactor was shut down. The other unit was not operating at the time because it was being refueled. 6 months later, both reactors remain shut down. Fortunately, NRC has determined that the actual release of radiation into the environment was minimal in this case. Is that right, Dr. McFarland?
I believe that is correct.
After the January shutdown, NRC sent in an inspection team. They issued their report last week, and according to NRC's inspection team, after just a single year of operation, a large percentage of tubes in the steam generators had been worn down because excessive vibration was causing them to rub against each other. Last week's report found that this problem was probably caused by faulty computer modeling in the design of the steam generators and by manufacturing issues. The report stated, quote, "The loss of steam generator tube integrity is a serious safety issue that must be resolved prior to further power operation," end quote. Do all of you agree that this is a serious safety issue?
Certainly.
I see the members of the witnesses all shaking their heads in the affirmative. Does anybody disagree? If not, I'll assume that all of you agree. Dr. McFarland, can you explain why these significant design and manufacturing flaws were not detected earlier? What NRC oversight process was in place to ensure that the new steam generators would be safe, and why didn't that process identify the flaws before these steam generators were turned on?
Thanks for your question, Congressman Waxman. I'm still learning about all the issues and the technical details of the issues at the San Onofre plant. And I understand that this past March, the NRC issued a confirmatory action letter to require evaluation and repair of the steam generators prior to restart. And so the NRC will certainly ensure that the plant is safe before it does restart. As to why this was not detected prior, I will defer to my colleagues for much of that question. But my understanding is that the NRC did evaluate the plans for the new steam generators, but certainly I think we will be evaluating the lessons learned from this entire experience.
Anybody else want to answer?
Yes, sir. To add to Chairman McFarland's answer, I'm in agreement with her answer. I would note that the augmented inspection team report that you referred to that was issued last week also identified 10 unresolved items that will be the subject of additional follow-up. I would just mention, relevant to your question, that there are, of these 10 items, some related to design issues, control of original design dimensions, and adequacy of Mitsubishi's thermohydraulic model that you mentioned. So at least 3 of the 10, I think, have direct relevance to the question you asked.
But why didn't the process identify these flaws before the generators were turned on?
Well, I didn't mention another of the 10, which is the methodology itself for the review is another one of the follow-up, unresolved item for additional follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I believe, Congressman, you're asking the right questions. Question I've asked the staff myself, because I believe that if you look at what the licensee did and going forward with the replacement, it followed our process in the way it should have. Everyone did what they were supposed to do under the process. So when you have an outcome that's not satisfactory, you have to take a look at the process. And I think we should take a look at the process and see if there's something that we can improve.
Well, I hope that all of you will look to see how we can prevent something like this from happening again at a nuclear reactor. It's a relief that the shutdown of this reactor went smoothly. The defects in the equipment were discovered before there was a major release of radiation into the atmosphere, but it should not take a release of any amount of radiation into the environment before problems like this one are detected. If ratepayers are going to foot the $670 million bill for new equipment at a nuclear reactor, that equipment needs to be safe and last a lot longer than 1 year. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Waxman, would you mind if we allow Mr. Elstendorf to answer your last question, too, without objection?
Thank you, Chairman Shimkus. Thank you, Congressman Waxman. I just had the chance. I was at San Onofre just 2 days ago. I spent 3 hours there Sunday afternoon this past weekend, and had members of Congressman Ice's staff, Senator Boxer, and Senator Feinstein's staff with me to receive a briefing from the licensee about this exact issue. And I agree with everything my colleagues have said. I'll also add that I believe there's a very comprehensive, rigorous technical evaluation that still is underway to look at these problems. And I assure you that everyone shares your concerns on the safety aspects of this issue.
Well, I appreciate that. We want to be sure that it operates safely, and we don't want to have to find out that it wasn't operating safely after the fact. We want to prevent problems. Thank you.
Gentleman's time expired. Chair recognizes gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we certainly, it's been unanimously noted here that the previous chairman certainly was a brilliant manipulator of rules and therefore exposed some weaknesses in the rules and processes within the NRC, which we would like your feedback on how to properly repair. If there's a bill that comes through our committee on reforms of NRC rules, I would ask each of you, if you could within the next 30 days, individually provide us your views on legislative changes that you feel would be useful in this process. It's nice that we can actually now ask you for that type of help, when before we felt like that would be, well, not appropriate. So it's great that there's now a new atmosphere that allows us to have open discussions about reforms within the NRC rules. One of the reforms that I think is necessary, and that's in declaration of an emergency. Again, I think that was highlighted in the last by the last chairman, that that's uncertain, and I'd like, Mr. Ostendorf, because of your unique background and view, your opinion on the lack of clarity in the management and leadership in the NRC during times of emergencies and how it could be improved.
Congressman Terry, thank you for your question. Let me make an overall comment first, and then I'll get to the specific issue on perhaps on emergency powers,
Okay.
if that's acceptable.
Sure.
And I'd say that we have, certainly under the Energy Reorganization Act, as well as the Commission's own internal commission procedures, we have in place a structure that guides how the Commission does business. And I think everybody here in this committee has experience in leadership roles, management roles, and so often how those roles are executed is a function of the personality and the character of the person who has the key positions. And so I could say at one level that there are no changes required to any of our procedures just by virtue of the fact that we have a different chairman in place right now. At the same time, I could say that, well, it should not be situation or personality or individual specific, and therefore there might be some changes that would be appropriate. So I commit to you to providing this feedback within 30 days on legislative remedies. With respect to emergency powers, as I previously testified before Congress, we had, and other colleagues, I think the same situation with Chairman Yasko at the time, grave concerns on his lack of notification as to whether we actually were in a situation where he had taken emergency authority in the events of Fukushima. And there was a clear lack of clarity as to whether or not he had taken those powers. And I think certainly trying to have a more bright line as to whether or not those powers are being invoked would be appropriate.
All right, I appreciate that. And Chairman McFarland, do you think in times of emergency it's important or not important to have the input of your other colleagues, commissioners?
I understand that the chairman has the authority in an emergency, and as chairman I would always follow the law and commission procedures. I'd like to
is that a no then?
Commit to that now. No, certainly it's the opposite. Okay. If time allowed, before emergency powers were declared, I would absolutely consult with the other commissioners to get their views and hear their concerns about
I appreciate the answer then, and I have one more question regarding the voting process. One of the things that we've learned is that there appears to be a lack of transparency, and commissioners, some have suggested that it needs to be more transparent to the point of all discussion should be live on camera and on the record. It's certainly how we do it in the House, but I kind of learned that it's more of a collegial, almost like the Supreme Court discussions. So yes or no, Ms. McFarland, do you believe that there needs to be changes in how the voting process is done? And in 7 seconds.
I think I need to learn more about the history of voting practices at the NRC to better understand the options for the internal voting procedures. And certainly, in an effort to maintain collegiality, before any changes were made to the voting process, I would consult again with my fellow commissioners to understand their thoughts on this issue.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think my colleague, I would just jump in and just say there's also an issue of time when a vote is called and how long people can vote, and there was a problem identified with that, so I appreciate that. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Barrow, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, the biggest thing going on in my state right now is the construction of the 2 nuclear cells at Plant Vogtle in my district. And I wonder who's in a position to give me an update on the status of the progress being made there. Yes, sir.
Congress and I was down there 2 weeks ago and visited the site, both Summer and Vogtle. And there's a lot of activity down there. There's probably close to 2,000 workers on the site at Vogtle, and they're working on both units 3 and 4. There has been a delay over some it was called rebar issues on the framing that goes down for the base mat concrete. I believe that there's a clear path forward for the licensee, Southern Nuclear Company, to move forward with that. Our NRC resident team is on site with at least 3 inspectors full-time, plus other people from Atlanta Region 2 offices to inspect the status of construction. I think things are moving along well.
What impresses me about a project this large is the relationship you got to have between the owners, the contractors, and the regulators. How would you describe the relation between the 3 groups of actors who are responsible for bringing this off?
My other colleagues, I'd ask them to also add in here, Congressman, but I think there's great openness in communications between Southern, and they're part of a consortium with Westinghouse and with Shaw, who's running the contracting group for the construction operation. I think those 3 entities on the consortium are communicating well with NRC, and I think it's as with any project, you have some lessons learned, some improvements that could be made. But I think as far as where things are from where I sit, I think it's in pretty reasonable condition.
Mr. Magwood, do you have anything to add?
I agree with Commissioner Ostendorf's comments. I visited the site myself some months ago and have talked recently with leadership associated with the project. And I think one answer I'd give to your question is that it's a learning process. This is the first time a nuclear power plant's been built using the 10 CFR Part 52 process.
First one we've done in this country in 30 years.
It's the first one in 30 years, but this is the first plant in history ever to use this particular process. And I think we've all learned a lot as we've gone forward in the last several months. Clearly, the relationship between the owners and the contractors is evolving as we speak. The relationship between NRC and the project is evolving because of the types of information that every side needs to have during the construction process. It's something we're all learning, and it's actually been a very educational process, I think, for everybody.
Commissioner Svinicki, have you got anything to add?
Congressman, I would only add that I share your observation about the importance of this communication 3 ways, the constructor, the licensee, and the regulator. And I've heard that acknowledgement articulated from Southern, from Shaw as well. And I think there's also a commitment, although they realize that communications need to get to a very high fidelity, also accountability of who has the authority to do what is something I think they've been working through some issues there, who approves what kind of changes. But I think also there's a commitment that they want to map these things out and learn these lessons one time, learn them early, and have the process go smoothly moving forward.
Chairman McFarland, what's your impression of the progress being made?
Of the, sorry.
Of the progress being made on this project?
As far as I understand, it's going well. The process is working as it should. The communication between the regulator, the NRC, and the licensee. And I have not had an opportunity yet in my 2 weeks to visit the Vogel plant, but I do look forward to visiting.
I look forward to your visit as well. One last question to all of y'all collectively. Are there any concerns on the horizon that you're aware of that we need to address or that would help us to know about?
At this point, no.
That go for the rest of you? Thank you so much. I give back the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Lotta, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the time and also for you all coming in again to testify. I tell you, it's a little bit different from the past testimonies we've had when you've all assembled. Quite refreshing. If I could start with this question. During the hearing process for a license renewal application, the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board and the Commission must adjudicate various contention, petitions, and appeals. Historically, such decisions were reached in a little over 100 days on average. Beginning in 2009, I guess we got the chart right here, as you can see. The average time frame doubled and remains at 185 days or higher. Our research showed that on several matters were pending before the Commission for over a year. The NRC's reliability principle states that regulatory action should always be fully consistent with written regulations, should be promptly, fairly, and decisively administered so as to lend stability to the nuclear operational and planning processes. Here's the question. What steps are the Commission taking to address this situation, and how promptly, fairly, and decisively administer these matters?
Let me take a first stab at this. I'll take the 30,000-foot view. My understanding is that the NRC and staff are working very efficiently as possible, but we all must recall that these license renewals or licensing issues are adjudicatory matters, and they take time before the Commission, especially when they are contested. And we at the Commission have no control over whether these issues are whether these licensing issues are contested. I'll let my colleagues jump in too.
In viewing your chart, Congressman, I think I would share two observations. One is that when the time period began to be protracted, I believe overlaps with periods where the Commission only had 3 serving members. And although I can't definitely attribute the prolonged durations to that period, I would say that the Commission functions best when it's at its full complement of 5. When there are only 3 members, if 2 vote, a quorum is not established, and the third has, in essence, a pocket veto. And so the Commission, in my view, does not function as efficiently when it is down at 3 members. So although I can't prove that that's part of the attribution of the prolonged durations, the other observation that I would make is that although I've only been on the Commission for a little over 4 years, but I have noticed that participants and interveners in the Commission's proceedings have really observed the evolution of license renewal issues over time. They have become extremely skilled and informed in their participation and intervention in these proceedings. Therefore, the numbers of appeals and petitions to the Commission has increased. I think in response to your question of what can we do, I would make a personal pledge to look at agency resourcing for our Office of Commission Appellate Adjudication, which is a group that, as a first instance, receives and reviews briefs on these appeals and develops drafts opinions and orders for the Commission. I think that we could look at whether that office is adequately resourced. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Magwood.
Their charts actually raises some questions in my own mind, so I'd like to discuss it with the staff to see if there are some trends that we should be aware of, and if there are some trends, find ways to correct them. But as a general matter, let me say that it's always been my view that regulatory actions take as long as they take. I don't think that regulators should ever really apologize for taking more time if more time is necessary to assure safety. But at the same time, I do think it's our responsibility to be efficient and to dispatch issues quickly and fairly. But if, because of the contested process, we have a longer than normal situation develop with a particular renewal, That is a process we simply have to work our way through. And we have had, in recent years, some issues, some plants that have had more difficult renewals.
Commissioner Osendorf.
Thank you, Congressman. I just agree with my colleagues. I'll add maybe just one statement, that is, while there are these issues with extended license renewal processes have typically almost always been in contested cases, I would say I think the commissioners at this table and Commissioner Pasalakis that have voted in a very timely manner on the actions when those have been presented to the commission. Not everything comes to us directly. There are certain activities before the licensing boards that we don't get involved in. But I'd say our voting record, I believe, has been very responsible as far as acting in a timely manner once it gets to us. Oftentimes that's delayed because of contentions.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I see my time has expired.
Time has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Capps, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman McFarland, congratulations on your new position. I wish you every success. As the fact that you're 2 weeks on the job and you're making an appearance here shows a lot of courage on your part, and I appreciate your willingness to do so. Before I get to my questions, as my colleague Mr. Waxman mentioned, I do represent Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant in California and the surrounding communities. Right now, some of the best eyes and minds in our country are looking at the seismic issues at this plant. And I've worked with the NRC and the utility there, which is PG&E, to pause the relicensing process until advanced seismic studies are finished and reviewed. And I do give a lot of credit to PG&E as well as state and federal regulators for working to update their seismic analyses. As a geologist, you surely recognize why this type of analysis is very important. This is first and foremost about safety. But the seismic concern also impact affordability and reliable generation as well. My constituents living in the communities around Diablo feel the same way. And I just want your commitment to work with us and make sure these studies are completed in a timely manner.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely committed to that.
And now I want to turn to the Fukushima disaster and the spent fuel pools. Fukushima clearly illustrates how spent fuel pools can become unstable when a nuclear power plant loses the power needed to cool them. The spent fuel rods in Fukushima continue to pose serious problems and many concerns as Japan attempts to stabilize and clean up the site. My understanding is that many spent fuel pools in the United States are even more densely packed with spent fuel rods. Chairman McFarland, what are the safety concerns associated with densely packed spent fuel pools?
This is an issue in one of the Fukushima activities, the Tier 3 Fukushima activities that the NRC will be looking at. So I assure you this issue will get attention. And it is, I believe, also getting attention from a National Academy of Sciences study as well.
Exactly. The alternative to pool storage, of course, is dry cask storage. And in 2006, the National Academy of Science issued a report showing that moving spent fuel from pools to dry above-ground casks reduces both the likelihood and potential impact of a radioactive release from spent fuel. Do you believe dry casks do rely on, do dry casks, this is my question, rely on external power sources to cool the stored fuel?
No, they are passively cooled.
Okay. As we all know, the reactors in Fukushima lost all power after the earthquake and the tsunami. So the question is, how did the dry cask on Fukushima site withstand the earthquake, the tsunami, and subsequent station blackout? I'm sure this is a question that you've been addressing.
Yeah. My understanding is that the spent fuel casks, the dry casks at Fukushima, withstood both the earthquake and tsunami very well. And we have additional information from this country because there were dry casks at the North Anna facility in Virginia during last summer's Mineral Virginia earthquake, and those dry casks also performed very well. I invite my colleagues to add anything if they would like.
I'll just add one comment, and that is that while there certainly has been a lot of concern and discussion about the spent fuel pools at the Fukushima site, the fact is that the spent fuel pools at Fukushima actually survived the event reasonably well. And today we believe, from all the information we received from our Japanese colleagues, are safe right now. And while we encourage them to remove that spent fuel out of those pools as quickly as possible, It does demonstrate how rigorous these buildings and structures are, and the ability of the facility at the Fukushima site to survive an earthquake and tsunami does give some confidence that these pools are safe and don't present a threat to the public.
And of course, this is a topic that's going to take a lot of continued study, long-term study. And I don't have to ask, I hope I can assume that there's a tremendous interest on your part in doing that. Given the benefits of dry casts, it would seem, and I'll ask for a confirmation from you or some comments, that accelerating transfer of spent fuel from pools to casks lowers the risk posed by densely packed spent fuel pools. And then to sum up in a few seconds, your thoughts on this particular area, which I wish to explore with you further.
Sure, and I would be happy to explore this in the future with you at greater length. But as I said, certainly the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is looking at this specific issue and will gather more information about this specific issue.
Thank you very much.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Chair now recognize gentleman from West Virginia, Mr. McKinley, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the committee as a whole, I think earlier there was some discussion about Congressman Barton bring up the subject of the Yucca Mountain. There was some discussion about it. I'm curious. I've been reading about Yucca Mountain since the 80s. I'm just one of 2 engineers in Congress that practice engineering. 82 is when the act was put into effect, and 87 is when Yucca Mountain was designated to be the repository. 25 years later, we're still talking about it. Is that what I'm hearing coming from the panel? We're not sure what we're going to do with that? Thank you.
It's not the NRC's job to make policy. We are a regulator. But given that, and given my past experience as a commissioner on the Blue Ribbon Commission, I will say yes, there is still discussion about Yucca Mountain. And let me just say, as a scientist, you're an engineer, and maybe in engineers you work faster than scientists, but science often works very slowly.
But I think we work faster than 25 years. I'm just curious, how much money has been spent on Yucca Mountain in terms of infrastructure, bricks and mortar? What have we invested in that over these 25 years?
This, again, is an issue that is not under the control or purview of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but I believe if you are looking just at what has been spent on Yucca Mountain itself and not on the entire waste disposal program, you are looking at a figure between $7 and $8 billion.
I'm sorry?
Between $7 and $8 billion. I don't have the exact number.
$7 and $8 billion?
If the gentleman will yield, I think you can make some claims for $15 billion. And the other thing, just to put this in perspective, what the NRC needs to do is finish the scientific study. A lot of the Yucca Mountain issue is DOE and money spent in that venue.
We have the permit.
The NRC is tasked, we hope eventually, to finish the scientific study, and then that would then be the final aspect of proving the viability for Yucca. They won't manage the site. They're not going to be empowered to do that.
I'm just trying to get a better handle of it up close. This glacial pace that we move around here is pretty incredible. To think that 25 years later we still don't have a place to deposit. So my question would be, from you all, your perspective, given there are probably two courses of action dealing with spent fuel rods, they're either going to go into a geological formation below the ground someplace, or we're going to recycle them, as they do in France with Arriva at La Hague. So can you tell me which is the more likely direction you see nuclear fuel rods going in this country?
Well, again, the NRC doesn't set that policy for the U.S. The NRC regulates the reactors and materials.
No, I'm just asking, I understand you don't, but I'm just, from your opinion, you are the regulatory group on nuclear power. I'm just trying to, where do you think we're going as a nation? After 25 years, if we can't decide it's going to be at Yucca Mountain or Washington, are we going to go to recycling? Which direction you think we should go as a nation?
No matter whether you go in direct disposal of spent fuel or you recycle, as France does, you will need a final repository. And France itself is working now on its final site selection for a deep geologic repository.
Do you see us as a nation, do you see us in recycling ever?
I think it's largely an economic and policy question.
Okay. I don't think it comes under your purview, but I believe under the act in '82 that they set up that the consumers using nuclear power would be assessed charges for the disposal of.
Yes, the nuclear waste fund. Yes.
Right. How's that? Where's that money going? If we don't have
you manage it. Congress manages the money, so the nuclear waste fund, and you appropriate it.
I'm trying to understand here. So we can have that turned back over to the consumer, or is it being collected and just saved?
It has been collected and saved into the nuclear waste fund, and the consumers. It's the ratepayers who pay into this fund at 1 mil per kilowatt hour.
The gentleman's time's expired.
Time's expired, I'm sorry, thank you.
Before I go to the gentlelady from Florida, I'd ask unanimous consent from my colleague, Mr. Green, for 1 minute.
Our colleague, and I think we need to look at both long-term storage, which Yucca Mountain was the solution from the 80s, but we also need to look at recycling, but we have to have interim storage. And the success in other countries, France, for example, they have interim storage, but recycling. But again, France doesn't have a long-term storage solution either, whereas Sweden, and I know Mr. Murphy and I were there a while back, and they at least have a potential for long-term storage in Sweden.
Gentleman's time expired. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Castor, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all very much for being here this morning. Dr. McFarland, in your testimony, you reference that there are currently 2 units in extended shutdowns, and one of those is the Crystal River Unit 3 in Florida. Crystal River remains in extended shutdown while its owner evaluates the repair options for separation in the concrete wall of the containment building. In 2009, you all are aware they were conducting some repairs there, and during that time they discovered an unexpected crack, separation in the concrete wall, and I guess the technical term is delamination. You all know more about that than I do. They informed the NRC. NRC sent an inspection team. You all followed up with a special inspection team. You've had public meetings. You've issued a special inspection report, came down for another public meeting. In June of last year, Progress Energy, the owner then, stated their intent that they intended to repair Crystal River, and they were proceeding with necessary engineering and construction plans, dealing with insurance issues with Neil, and had stated an intent to return the plant to service in 2014. Since that time, just here earlier in the month, Progress Energy merged with Duke Energy. And reports following that merger appear to make the future of the Crystal River Unit 3 plant a little more uncertain. It appears that the NRC's position has been that Crystal River can be repaired safely. Is that correct in your opinions? And have any of you traveled to the site?
Well, as you might suspect, I haven't had the opportunity to travel to Crystal River yet, but I will intend to learn more about the situation at Crystal River, and I'll ask my colleagues to comment.
I had the opportunity to visit Crystal River, I think it's probably been about 2 months ago, and I did inspect the repair work that is underway. The NRC staff has been watching this very closely. The repair work that is underway is very complex in many ways. Some of it's actually quite unique, but from everything that I was able to learn during my visit and in subsequent conversations, it is clearly repairable. It is clearly something that the licensee knows how to complete. I think that the kinds of discussions that you're referring to are business decisions, really. How long are they willing to wait, and how much will it cost them? But from a regulatory standpoint, from a technical standpoint, it seems quite repairable. But whether it's a decision they plan to make or not, we'll wait and see.
Any other comments?
I visited Crystal River maybe 2 years ago. My understanding is not as up to date as Commissioner Magwood, but I believe it's consistent with what I've heard generally.
Okay. Is it the NRC's role to examine the costs, do a cost-benefit analysis of moving forward or not?
No, that would not be an appropriate role for us.
Okay. If the nuclear reactor is repaired, is it subject to all of the updated NRC safety requirements?
Yes.
Including ones, is that the same as if it were going for a new license? Their license expires, the license for this plant expires in 2016. Is that the same analysis and the same requirements?
Same requirements for?
A repair is that consistent with would NRC be asking for the same updated safety requirements when they go for a license renewal? Their license the license expires here in 2016.
My understanding is not necessarily, but I'll.
But I think as a general matter that all of our plants operate under the same safety standards. So we don't differentiate between a plant that's operating under its original license versus a plant that's operating under its renewed license or a plant that's been repaired. They're all expected to meet the same standards.
Are you aware that the Duke Energy Board of Directors conducted an independent analysis of the Crystal River plant and has the NRC, has anyone received any report or the details of that independent analysis conducted here over the last few months?
I'm not aware of that, and I'm not aware that the agency has received any such report.
Generally, as time's expired. I do appreciate my colleagues really getting their questions done, and we've got a lot of members that are still obviously here to ask questions, and everybody's been doing it in a timely manner. I appreciate that. Chair, now recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Gardner, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for your time today, and to welcome Ms. McFarland to the committee. In a previous question, there was a question about emergency powers that were taken up by the previous chairman of the NRC. Are any of those powers left, residual powers? They've all been, business as usual has been restored, returned?
It's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. And a couple questions about the Office of Public Affairs I think are very important to some of the interactions that we have had as this committee with the NRC. If you take a look at the reorganization plan of 1980 that provided the Office of Public Affairs reports directly to the chairman to assist the chairman as the principal spokesman for the agency. When this committee began its investigation into governance, we identified of the NRC, we identified some key questions about the role of the Office of Public Affairs, and wanted to just talk and read a little bit about some of the work that we've seen coming out of the Office of Public Affairs. And this from a July 2011 rollout plan for the Fukushima Task Force recommendations as prepared by the Director of the Office of Public Affairs. And I quote, "In this speech, the chairman can lay out his thought for how to proceed, what he sees as his priorities, the need to move with dispatch, etc. This will be a subtle nudge to others to get on board or appear to be foot-dragging. The speech needs to be A, newsworthy, and B, collegial but firm with perhaps a notional timetable in it to set expectations which, if not met, he can point to as evidence of fill-in-the-blank criticism." That statement then was made, and of course in December to the Washington Post editorial page, here's another statement from the Office of Public Affairs, and I quote, "As you may have noticed, our chairman is in a shooting match with his 4 colleagues on the commission, a very public and bitter dispute," end quote. The office director drafted a statement that read, quote, "I was not the choice of the nuclear industry to sit on the commission, let alone be chairman. Time after time on critical safety questions, my vote has been the lone tally cast in the interest of stronger safety requirements and accountability. Others have sought a different level of safety. Some have sought to delay and dilute safety decisions," end quote. And I guess I would ask to you, Madam Commissioner and Chairman, excuse me, and to the other commissioners, do you believe it is appropriate for the Public Affairs Office to devise press strategies to influence commissioners' votes or to impugn commissioners' dedication to public safety?
Thanks for your question. As you said, my understanding is that the Office of Public Affairs at the NRC assists the chairman in carrying out his or her responsibilities as principal spokesperson for the NRC. Therefore, the Director of Public Affairs and the Office of Public Affairs works at the direction of the chairman. And all I can point out is now there is a new chairman. And in my 2 weeks there, I have been comfortable working with the Office of Public Affairs.
And so the question of, do you believe it's appropriate for Public Affairs to devise press strategies to influence commissioners' votes, you would disagree with that strategy?
As far as I understand your question, yes.
So you would not be using the Office of Public Affairs would not be used to try to influence other commissioners?
I have absolutely no intention of doing that.
Or to impugn dedication to public safety?
I have no intention of that.
Other commissioners care to comment?
I would note, Congressman, that a member of the committee this morning asked for any recommendations where statutory language could be perhaps clarified about the appropriate uses of perhaps an office such as Public Affairs. And so I would note that the legislative history of this matter indicates that although the chairman is the principal spokesman, he or she is to be bound in those communications by the overall policy and guidance of the commission as a whole. So I didn't respond earlier to the question about proposing changes to the Reorganization Act or plan, but I do feel that my experiences of the last 4 years have exposed areas where there was disagreements amongst members of the commission about what these statutory provisions meant. And so in my commitment to provide any proposals, I think they wouldn't be to change anything the Congress did after 3 Mile Island, because I think it was appropriate to strengthen the chairman's role. But I do think that we have disputed each other over what some of the words mean, and to the extent that the Congress were willing to clarify or emphasize some of these points, I think it could further the collegial functioning of the commission in the future.
And that's exactly right. And so, I mean, and so going back, I'm running short on time here, and just to make sure that we're clear on what this Office of Public Affairs can and shouldn't be used for, to the chairman, is it appropriate for the chairman to use the Public Affairs Office to promote personal views as a commissioner? That's direct that to you.
To promote personal views?
Yes, to
promote
their personal policy views, excuse me.
The chairman is representing the organization, so personal views should not be part of this.
Okay, and you made the comments on the collegial structure. And I guess I would just ask for your commitment, Madam Chairman, to refrain. Will you commit to refrain from these tactics that have been used in the past?
As far as I understand them, yes, I commit.
As far as you understand them? So
as far as I understand what happened in the past. I was not part of the commission in the past, and I'm trying to understand what has happened with the office.
So you won't be using the Public Affairs Committee? I'm out of time.
Chairman, gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Engel, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, everybody. Dr. McFarland, congratulations. I want to talk to you about Indian Point in New York City suburbs. It's one of the most serious issues facing New York. Indian Point is located, obviously, by our nation's largest metropolitan area. It has an operational history that has been plagued by irresponsible acts, unplanned shutdowns, lacking spent fuel pools, and inadequate emergency notification and response systems. One of the planes hijacked on September 11th flew over Indian Point on its way to the World Trade Center. We've learned that the plant is located near 2 seismic faults that together raise the possibility of an earthquake far larger than any anticipated when it was built. And there simply isn't enough roads to allow for a real evacuation in the event of an accident or attack. Neither of the county executives in both Westchester County, which I represent, and Rockland County, which I also represent, both county executives, one Republican, one Democratic, have refused to certify the evacuation plans for Indian Point because they know they're ridiculous. Indian Point's 2 active reactors are set to retire in 2013 and 2015 unless their application for relicensing are approved. And there's always been a cozy relationship, unfortunately, between the NRC and the industry, which in my opinion has precluded a serious and realistic evaluation of the safety of Indian Point. I've toured it. I've been there with your predecessor, Dr. McFarland, and I'm interested in meeting with you to discuss Indian Point in greater detail and perhaps tour with me and Congresswoman Lowy. Would you be willing to arrange a time to meet with me and talk?
Would I be willing to do that in the future? Absolutely. I would be willing to talk with you about it and visit it together with you.
Thank you. And let me say at the outset, I am not opposed to nuclear power. I never issued a peep about Indian Point until September 11th, when it became clear to many of us that this was a safety hazard. So thank you. I want to talk about decommissioning. It's an expensive process. The New York Times reported in March of this year that the operators of 20 of the nation's aging nuclear reactors, including some whose licenses expire soon, have not saved nearly enough money for prompt and proper dismantling. And Entergy, which owns the Indian Point plant, again just 24 miles north of New York City, and is at least $500 million short of the $1.5 billion estimated cost of dismantling Indian Point reactors 2 and 3. Entergy insists that the shortfall won't be a problem because they expect Indian Point to be relicensed for another 20 years. And over that period of time, they expect interest to accrue to sufficient levels in the reactor's retirement accounts. But the fact is that 12 reactors across the country have been retired in the last 3 decades, all on short notice because of a design or safety flaw that the economics did not justify fixing. The shortfall in these retirement accounts raises the possibility that New York could be sitting on sleeping reactors for decades. So, Dr. McFarland, I'd like to ask you, what do you envision happening if one of the nation's 20 underfunded reactors needed to be decommissioned?
Well, I will note that the U.S. has decommissioned a number of reactors, and they have been decommissioned successfully. So it can happen. There can be a positive outcome. As far as how to handle the scenario that you describe, I think we will probably have to visit it if it happens.
Okay. I want to finally talk about relicense criteria because I've long been concerned that the relicensing of aging power plants is not subject to the same stringent criteria used in an application for new power plants for initial construction. So let me ask you this, Doctor. Would you support using the same criteria for relicensing an existing plant as we use to license new plants?
As the brand new plants, it's my understanding that we have a well-established license renewal program. Of course, that doesn't substitute for day-to-day regulatory oversight that's required of the operating plants. There is a lengthy public hearing process that engages a variety of stakeholders in relicensing, and so all of this information is publicly available, and I commit to ensuring that these reactors operate safely.
Thank you. If I may just take about 5 more seconds, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that information that wasn't available when the plant was originally licensed, in my estimation, should that not be considered in relicensing?
I think it depends on the particular situation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank my colleague. Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess, for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman for the recognition, and I thank our witnesses for staying with us through this lengthy hearing today, but it is important. And we hear a lot, and you all mentioned it in your opening statements about the collegiality and the importance of that, and why, of course, the average American doesn't know what the NRC is and probably would not be able to name the commissioners, but for the average American, why should they care about collegiality on the board. Aren't you just supposed to do your jobs anyway?
Certainly, we're supposed to do our jobs anyway. I think we do them better, and we do gain the trust of the American people when they do realize that there is an NRC out there. We gain a stronger sense of trust when we do operate collegially. I think it's very important that we operate collegially just to make the process and all the decisions that we take work efficiently.
I don't disagree with that, but in fact, should not people be able to depend on your commission even in the absence of collegiality?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the commission did operate and handle all the issues that came before it, no matter what the situation.
Well, it did seem that at times there were whispers, there were rumors that legitimate differences in policy were interpreted as some of the commissioners being characterized as anti-safety. For the three commissioners who set the historical precedent, did that ever come up with your discussions amongst yourselves?
Congressman, I disagree with the characterizations that some of the recent issues on the Commission had to do with disagreeing votes on policy matters. I believe over the course of my tenure, I've served with a number of members of the Commission who are no longer on the Commission. I think at one time or another, I've probably disagreed with everybody. I think that the dysfunction on the Commission was much more substantive than a simple policy disagreement. It was more substantive. It had to do with impeding the flow of information and other very fundamental issues that I felt obstructed the ability for this commission to operate in the way Congress intended.
So legitimate policy differences really should not be interpreted as anti-safety, but you're saying there was an actual impediment of information flow that kept you from doing your job, whether there was a policy difference or not. You were not able to do your job as far as public health and safety was concerned.
That's correct.
And I guess I am getting the impression this morning that that situation has resolved.
I think we're off to a very, very productive beginning.
So the American public, to the extent that they're watching this hearing this morning, can take some comfort in the fact that whereas public health and safety may not have been at the forefront in the past, it will be going forward.
I think all of us kept public health and safety forefront, and as Chairman McFarland indicated, there was an impressive amount of agency work that was conducted. However, I would hope that some would view there's a great unanimity here, and there's an optimism about moving forward.
Mr. Orstendorf, let me ask you a question, because you brought up your observation that the series of events in Japan of March of 2011 would be unlikely to occur in this country. I suspect that the month before the earthquake, that same statement could have been made about Japan, could it not?
Congressman, I think the way I'd respond to that is that there are significant regulatory differences and some cultural differences between the United States and Japan as it affects the nuclear industry. As other members of the committee have noted, the Japanese Diet report that came out just last week highlighted two substantive differences between the United States regulatory framework and that in Japan. One dealing with the actions we took in this country after the attacks of 9/11 to require additional mitigating strategies called B5B under our rules to deal with fires, explosions, and flooding. And the second to deal with the station blackout scenario, loss of all power. I think those are two substantive differences between our two regulatory frameworks that are significant factors from the comparison of the two countries.
Let me just ask you, and I may have to submit this for the record because of time, but the month before the Japanese earthquake, Chairman Shimkus took several of us out to Yucca Mountain. Now, after the Japanese earthquake, one of the big problems that was encountered was the loss of the spent fuel rods that were in the cooling pools and the loss of electricity. It seemed to me that just underscored the importance of getting whatever the long-term storage solution is, and I believe Yucca Mountain is still viable, but getting that done and getting those spent fuel rods out of those pools. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think as others at this table have mentioned earlier in today's testimony, the Office of Research at the NRC is working on a study, it's almost finished, on the spent fuel pool risk associated with keeping fuel in the pool as contrasted to take them out of the pool and putting into dry cask where they're air cooled. There's lots of other factors associated with, accelerated campaign risk of taking those out in an expedited manner. And I think overall our staff's assessment to date has been those risks are very, very low, but it's still something we're looking at as part of our Fukushima actions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you having this hearing. Appreciate the commissioners for coming before us. We've had almost a year and a half now since Fukushima to receive vast amounts of data. A lot's been published about the causes, the actions being taken by the global industry. With the benefit of the information that we have any of your initial conclusions, for those of you who got a little construction going on here?
Will the gentleman suspend for a second?
Sure.
I don't know. Committee staff, someone needs to find out who's doing work and get him to stop. Gentleman may proceed.
I'm not sure if that's a shovel-ready project. I guess I'll proceed. We'll just have to bear with it. But based on the data that we have any of you maybe have different reactions today than what the initial assessments were back a year and a half ago, or less than a year and a half ago, about the cause and the priority of the regulatory actions associated with Fukushima? If we could just start with Mr. Ossendorf and go down.
Thank you, Congressman. I think, right after the Fukushima event, the Commission made a decision that we did not need to shut down nuclear power plants in this country. We felt that there was no imminent risk. I believe that finding is still relevant today and appropriate today. I think at a big picture level, the intervening months have indicated that we were on a good track and are on a good track to take an integrated, prioritized approach to what actions we need to take. And I think the emphasis on Tier 1 activities to date, mitigating strategies, station blackout, looking at external hazards has been appropriate. And I think that is echoed and been reinforced over the last 16, 17 months.
Thanks. Mr. Magwood?
I think that over the last year we've had ample opportunity to talk to our international colleagues about their response to the Fukushima events. And as I've talked with regulators from around the world, I've discovered a great deal of commonality between what we're doing and the thoughts that they're having. We actually are more advanced in many of our efforts than they are, so that gives us some reassurance. And I think that the more we know about how things actually unfolded in Japan over the last several years, we see that the Japanese have much more to learn from Fukushima than we did, and that they are trying to absorb those lessons themselves. And a lot of them are cultural issues that are very difficult to change. So as the last year and a half has gone by, I actually have grown in confidence that the steps we've taken are the appropriate steps.
Ms. Sminsky?
I agree with my colleagues.
Thanks. If y'all can, I don't know if you've got maybe a top 5 or just some top safety changes that you think both the NRC and the industry have taken. What are some of the top things to improve safety that you've seen or that you think should be done that haven't been done based on the information we know now?
Let me take the first crack at that. First, let me say I do think that the infrastructure that we had and the approaches that we had before Fukushima were very strong. I don't think that they were lacking. But I do think that one thing I would point to is a greater acceptance of the need to be able to respond to beyond design basis events. And that's not one specific change. It's more of a philosophical change, I think, that we're all dealing with. The idea that you don't simply that you prepare for beyond the worst case scenario. You provide equipment, you provide training, you do whatever you can to be ready to respond in case there's a large earthquake or large flood or a large storm. And that's a philosophical change that the agencies are adopting.
All right, thanks. If you look at situations where the NRC comes out with new requirements to hinder implementation of other recent NRC requirements, when you look at the NRC's efficiency principle, which states regulatory activities should be consistent with the degree of risk or risk reduction they achieve, I think Commissioner Magwood, you had written, it does not as a general matter, advance the cause of safety to inundate licensee staffs with multiple actions when a more thoughtful process might achieve the agency's safety goals without straining licensee resources. Do you have a view on whether staff industry concerns on potential cumulative effects on multiple new requirements have merit?
I think there is some merit, but I think it's very important to understand why there is merit. And I think the reason it's important is to make sure that you're, and I think I think a previous member put it very well, that you are not distracted by issues of low safety significance, and in dealing with those, miss something that's much more important. It's always important, most important, to focus on the priority safety effects and to make sure you deal with those early. And I do think that we ought to look for more ways of addressing that in our process to make sure that we aren't focusing too much on the small things and missing the big things.
All right, see, I'm out of time. I appreciate answers. Yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to welcome you, Chairman McFarland, and congratulate you on your recent confirmation. After the Fukushima meltdowns, then Chairman Yaskow created a task force to recommend safety upgrades for American nuclear reactors. That task force was made up of NRC officials who together had more than 135 years of nuclear regulatory expertise. Its report was released more than a year ago and included 12 recommendations, which ranged from requirements to upgrade seismic and flood protections against the long power outages that were the ultimate cause of the Japanese meltdown. They also concluded that each and every one of the recommendations were necessary for the adequate protection of nuclear power plants and that they should be mandatory for each nuclear reactor. Mandatory. Chairman Yaskow immediately announced his support for all of the NRC staff's recommendation. Regrettably, some of his fellow NRC commissioners did not do likewise and initially insisted that other NRC staff review the task force report before the Commission voted on any of the recommendations. But this second staff review reached the same conclusions as the first one. They concluded that all recommendations should be made mandatory. Despite this, the Commission has not voted to endorse its top staff's reviews, and thus it is possible that some of the Fukushima safety upgrades will never be made mandatory for all nuclear power plants. Chairman McFarland, do you support the conclusion of the NRC's top safety experts that all of the post-Fukushima safety recommendations are necessary for the adequate protection of nuclear power plants?
Thanks for that question. As chairman, I am strongly committed to protecting the public health and safety, and I'm strongly committed to shepherding the Fukushima Task Force recommendations through.
Do you believe that they should be mandatory?
I think that I need to understand more about especially the Tier 2 and Tier 3 activities, especially the Tier 3 activities.
Would it be a good idea if, or outcome if it turned out that the nuclear industry argued its way out of adopting some of the recommendations the top experts recommended on the grounds that it would be too expensive or inconvenient?
Certainly that would not be a good outcome.
Well, when the NRC staff reviewed the task force report, it identified several safety measures that could be implemented quickly, and I'm pleased that the Commission has moved forward on these. The staff stated that the fact that they had identified some recommendations that could be adopted early, quote, should not be interpreted as a lack of support for the other task force recommendations. But recently, the Nuclear Energy Institute started to discourage the NRC from moving forward on the rest of the recommendations, saying that the recommendations that were adopted would accomplish, quote, as much as 90% of the safety benefit from all recommendations, and that, quote, at this time the safety benefits derived from the rest of the recommendations are unclear. So I'd like you to respond to this, Chairman McFarland. Do you agree with the Nuclear Energy Institute that the Commission should delay or stop the consideration of the rest of the safety recommendations that the NRC's Fukushima task force made?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And I agree with you. And I know that there are other commissioners who disagree with that point of view. And I would just like to say that you have a very difficult job ahead of you, Madam Chair. And you need to keep in mind that your duty is not to win a popularity contest at the NRC with commissioners who disagree with this safety agenda, but you must lead it to in an absolutely critical time when it is faced with the daunting task of responding to the lessons of the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns in a way that ensures that such a thing never happens in the United States. You are charged with the task of ensuring the safety of our fleet of existing nuclear plants, of licensing any new ones, and of responding to what future course our nation takes with respect to the seemingly intractable issues of how to dispose of all of the toxic, high-level nuclear waste. And while I would hope that all would be sweetness and light over at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I seriously doubt that that will be the case. So don't be afraid to stick up for your guns and do what is right for the American people, even if that puts you on the losing side of a vote. For in the end, Madam Chair, your term as chairman will be judged on whether you have successfully completed the task of fully implementing the NRC task force recommendation on Fukushima, on ensuring that there is safety in the disposal of nuclear waste. And that will be your legacy, notwithstanding the fact that there are going to be other members of the Commission who disagree with that agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Walden, for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman, and I welcome the new chairwoman to the commission. We appreciate you and your colleagues and the important role that you play in providing safety and security for our nation's nuclear power facilities. As my colleagues, I think, up and down the aisle and across the aisle, we all believe that that's an essential part of your job, both moving forward with nuclear energy development, but making sure that we're safe along the way. I'd like to ask the other commissioners, since you weren't given a chance to respond to my colleague's question regarding the task force recommendations, your views on those recommendations and whether you believe they should be just automatically adopted or not, or why they're not. And maybe we could just go from left to right, since the chairwoman had a chance to respond. So.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Upon receipt of those recommendations from the task force, I voted, as did a commission majority, to take that output of that small group, albeit very experienced, as Congressman Markey mentioned. They were just a small group of individuals, and I voted to subject those recommendations to the opportunity for public outreach, for comment, for a wide diversity of stakeholders to have an opportunity to comment on that, and then for the NRC staff to synthesize all of that input and prioritize and propose to the Commission a plan for moving forward on those recommendations. As of sitting here today, I continue to believe that that was a fulsome and appropriate way to proceed.
So there had not been a transparent or public process prior to that?
There had not been an opportunity to ventilate or to have public comment on those recommendations.
Is that a normal process at an independent agency?
I think that it is not inappropriate for commissioners to have, as a starting point, a small experienced group provide some advice, and it was comprised solely of NRC staff. So, but I do think that it was important to take that very timely and I think informed output, but subject it to a much broader kind of opportunity for public comment.
I appreciate that. Mr. Magwood? Would you care to comment?
Yes, I think Commissioner Seminicki said it very well. In addition, we also insisted that the Advisory Committee on Reactor Safeguards, our expert outside independent advisory group, give us input as to their thoughts about these recommendations. And we also because we were learning as we went during that process, we individual commissioners actually did make additions, not subtractions, but additions to what the task force recommended. Absolutely. There were several instances where our colleague Commissioner Apostolakis put in new items. I put in new items. Others did as well. So we
additional
really,
safeguard items.
Additional items for study that that I believe will eventually be adopted, and I think these were very important. And Commissioner Ostendorf, for example, made the addressing the station blackout a very high priority, higher than I think the staff had originally anticipated. So the Commission took a very active role in this, and I think a very positive, very beneficial role, and I'm very proud of what we did.
So Commissioner Ostendorf, so explain to me the station blackout role and why that was an important addition from your perspective.
Yes, sir. The station blackout rule or evaluation really refers to when you have a loss of all alternating current AC power on site. And AC power is needed.
Much like what happened at Fukushima.
Yes. And AC power is needed to drive centrifugal pumps that provide cooling to remove heat from decay heat from a core. And so the ability of a plant to have robust, redundant power sources, including emergency diesel generators, portable generators, DC batteries, the ability to recharge those batteries, all those things are part of the calculus of how we can have a more robust opportunity to provide this required decay heat removal capability.
And was it your view that the task force recommendations didn't go far enough along those lines?
I think the task force did a tremendous job given the fact they had 90 days or less to do what they did. But I'll note that the task force recommendations themselves were not accompanied by a regulatory technical analysis. And before we go out as a regulator and issue orders or require things to be changed, it's incumbent upon us to have a regulatory technical analysis. So that's part of the things that Commissioner Svinicki, Commissioner Magwood, Commissioner Postolakis and I have been very adamant about over the last 16 months is to ensure we have that technical analysis. I would tell you that, as Commissioner Magwood said, that there are areas that have been added in. Commissioner Magwood added in issues on spent fuel pool instrumentation as well as an ultimate heat sink. So the mix before the Commission today is broader than that was presented in July of 2011.
Well, I appreciate that, and I know I'm just out of time here, but I appreciate the fact you're doing a public, transparent process so that more than just a handful of inside staffers decide what's going to be mandatory across the country. It's something I've driven as chairman of the Communications and Technology Subcommittee at the FCC. I don't think they do enough of the appropriate sort of public, transparent process where everybody has a chance to weigh in. After all, it is the public's business, in your case, the public safety, and I think it's important to get it right. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
I thank my colleague. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having this hearing. I have to tell you all, that those who were here at the last time that you all were before us know that I was very concerned that the process was completely dysfunctional. I feel much better today. That being said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield the time remaining to you for whichever questions you'd like to ask.
And I thank my friend and colleague. Chairman McFarland, when nominated to become a commissioner, Chairman Yasko recused himself for 1 year on matters relating to Yucca Mountain. In 2009, when asked by a writer for the MIT Technological Review, is it, Yucca Mountain, really unsuitable? And you answered yes. In your role as NRC chairman, you must be fair and objective in adjudicating issues that come before the commission. Your public criticism of Yucca Mountain leads us to question your objectivity on the matter. Will you recuse yourself on matters relating to Yucca Mountain, just as Chairman Yasko did?
Like any commissioner, I would examine each and every matter before me on the legal specifics at the time and take appropriate action, which could include possible recusal. But at this point, I believe it's inappropriate to commit to a general recusal on this matter without a specific commission action in front of me to evaluate with council input.
You've been well prepared. Thank you. The D.C. Circuit Court is considering whether the NRC is bound to finish its review of the Yucca Mountain license application. In March, Secretary Chu committed to honor that court's decision. Will you also commit to honor the court's decision?
Absolutely.
What do you see as the federal government's proper role in encouraging the use of alternative fuels and vehicles?
Alternative fuels and vehicles?
Yeah. I have no idea why this is on there.
Because the NRC doesn't do that.
Well, when we talk about electric vehicles, there could be some debate on electricity generation. To each of the serving commissioners, you know, we've been, as a hearing, it's been a very good hearing. And now that's Mr. Markey going up there to stop me on my final, see, I called him out. So I think the hearing's been very, very good. And we've got one more colleague back to ask questions. But there is some issues that have been raised that I want to give Commissioner Svinicki, Commissioner Magwood, and Commissioner Ostendorf an opportunity to, because some of your votes have been questioned by people who say that you don't support safety. So can you, each one of you, give us an example of a vote that has been misconstrued and explain why your vote was protective of public safety? Commissioner Slavinicki?
I would begin with the matter we were just discussing, which is the Commission's very important actions on the Fukushima Task Force recommendations. I'll use the same word as Commissioner Magwood. I'm very proud of what the Commission majority put in place. I think that we have shown a real commitment to safety, to moving forward in a way that has technical discipline and rigor, but at the same time is moving forward very seriously with these recommendations. And I think that the entire handling of the task force report has been extremely misconstrued.
Commissioner Magwood?
Yeah, I think I'm forced to point to the same example. There's been this debate about the basis of the regulatory basis for our decision as to whether they should be under what we call adequate protection or an administrative exemption. And in some cases, one of us or the other may have advocated an administrative exemption. And in my case, it wasn't because I thought that these issues weren't important. It was simply, as Commissioner Ostendorf pointed out earlier, that I thought we need to have a much more rigorous technical basis to evaluate these issues. But I wanted them to go forward, but still preserve the opportunity to do the analysis so that they provide a very strong framework for us to go forward. So operationally, they mean the same thing, but from a regulatory standpoint, it gives you a stronger basis to go forward, and that's what I was looking for.
Thank you. Commissioner Ostendorf?
Thank you for the question. I think my two colleagues have just provided very cogent examples, which I agree with. I will just state one overall comment that I think the actions that the current commissioners have taken who've been here for the Fukushima issues have been very responsible, that I think in large part what gets left out of a lot of the public press commentary is that we are by and large following the recommendations of our close to 4,000 person staff. Bill Borchert here is in the row behind us. He and his team under a steering committee have been integrating and prioritizing these recommendations, and I think we've been very thoughtful in considering their recommendations. Also realize that not all of these issues are the same safety significance. Therefore, some deserve more urgency than others. I think to date we've acted in that way.
And I think, you know, I know a lot of this was the post-Fukushima, but I think there's also examples of other issues that you could probably defend your vote on public safety. So with that, I appreciate it. Chair, and I recognize the Vice Chairman of the committee, Mr. Murphy, for 5 minutes.
Don't you want to say him in the Navy?
I said beat Navy. You were here there, weren't you? Yes. Or that's why you're so late and ask questions, because you didn't get here on time.
Admiral, I want to start off by asking you, you've been involved with issues with Navy nuclear for a while. You're aware of that. Have we ever had any major problems with nuclear energy systems in the Navy in its history?
I would say, as far as major problems, no, sir.
That's important to go on record. How many years has it been?
I served 26 years in active duty.
But the Navy has been around.
Navy's
nuclear
been, since USS Nautilus back in 1954, I believe. I've had nuclear power submarines and carriers.
Good track record. Thank you. And Madam Chairman, thank you for coming aboard. I appreciate your comments about collegiality. Not only, and if it hasn't been said before, I'll say it now, and if it has, I repeat it, it's valuable. Not only collegiality among members of the NRC, which up to this point, well, up to a point a few months ago, has had a highly respected position, and I believe the collegiality is extremely important, not just among members of the Commission, but with Congress and with the American people. So I appreciate your motivation to turn this in a different direction. I just want to get a couple of things on record. Have you been to a nuclear power plant?
Have I been to a nuclear power plant? Yes.
Okay. And have you seen have you been to a fuel manufacturing facility where they make nuclear fuel, would assemble it, and the assembly rods, et cetera?
Yes, I have, actually.
Oh, good. Where was that?
It was in Europe.
Where? Just curious.
I think it was Belgium.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. When you were over in Europe, did you have a chance to see what they do in France with reprocessing nuclear fuel?
Yes, I have. I've been to Le Hague.
The Arriva place. Have you been over to Sweden where they have nuclear storage there?
Yes,
underground
I have.
In that massive cave?
Yes, to the Clab facility, yes.
Pretty incredible. Pretty incredible facility over there. Safe?
Yes.
I imagine you took particular interest as a geologist, noting as the entire country of Sweden is in one big block of granite and fairly stable.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
I understand. Different types of granite, but it's an impressive facility. Have you been to Yucca Mountain?
Yes, many times.
You have been there. And with regard to that, one of the concerns on record is that you have stated before you took on this position with the committee that you are not in favor of Yucca Mountain, and I believe you're not in favor of reprocessing. Do I have those positions correct, or am I wrong on those?
I think you're wrong on them. On the Yucca Mountain position, I have never said that I am not in favor of Yucca Mountain. In fact, I can read to you
I'd love to hear that. Thank you.
from the book that I co-edited, Uncertainty Underground, and a direct quote is, "This book is not a judgment on the suitability of Yucca Mountain as a
I'm sorry, what was the title of the book? Uncertainty?
Uncertainty Underground."
Sounds like a comment to me.
It's a comment, yes. It's a comment about uncertainty that exists, but it's a technical uncertainty. Anyway, the quote is, "This book is not a judgment on the suitability of Yucca Mountain as a repository for spent nuclear fuel and high-level nuclear waste. We leave that judgment to the reader."
I understand, but with a title like that, I'm serious. I'm looking forward to reading your book. I know your predecessor, Chairman Yasko, held a fairly negative view, I think, of the nuclear industry and nuclear energy. In a speech earlier this year, he indicated that 20 years from now, the nuclear industry is just as likely to, quote, be dominated by a process of continuous decommissioning, unquote, instead of a process of continuous construction of nuclear reactors. What's your view on that?
On the future of the nuclear industry? I think it depends on many, many factors.
Can you, I don't have...
The economics, certainly the economy right now.
And policy?
Policy, absolutely.
Policy of the NRC?
The policy at NRC, to a smaller degree, I would imagine.
All right. Would you please share your opinion regarding the benefits of and transparency of the notation voting process of the members?
As far as I understand the notation voting process, I think it has the potential to operate fine. Were there to be any changes to the voting process, I would discuss those with my colleagues before proceeding.
How about the other commissioners? Ms. Vinicki, do you have a comment on that?
On the notation voting process, I'm supportive of the notation voting process. When I was newly on the commission, I benefited greatly from the rich written record of prior votes of commissioners. Often we're dealing with the same issue in a different form a few years later. The ability to tap into the tremendous expertise of those who served before me was very beneficial.
I think about a week ago, I saw a vote that Commissioner Savinicki had written that raised issues that we actually in my office had missed. So we investigated Commissioner Savinicki's comments and her vote. Took a few days to do that, but after investigating it, I withdrew my original vote and re-voted. That's an example of the kind of dynamic you get from a notation voting process that you would completely lose if you go to an oral at-the-table process, because you don't have time to go back and do research, and you don't have time to confer with staff. And so I think the notation voting process works extremely well, and I wouldn't really change much of anything.
Thank you. Commissioner Ossendorf?
I just add, I agree with my colleagues. I pulled out a vote I cast July 27th of last year. It's a 5-page vote on Fukushima issues. These are not yes or no issues. These are not up or down. These are very complex. Here's my vote. Other colleagues have similar length votes where I think we have a very rich opportunity to learn from and explain our viewpoints in a way that we would not have if this process went away.
I appreciate the complexity of those. Mr. Chairman, can I just beg for one more since I don't see anybody else?
Without objection.
Just 30 seconds. Madam Chair, in 2009, when you were asked by a writer for the MIT Technology Review, the question, is Yucca really unsuitable, unquote, you answered yes at that time. Are you saying your opinion has changed? And I put this in the context of what the other commissioners said, the value of having a more lengthy and detailed answer to things, because many of these things cannot be reduced to a yes-no answer. Has your position changed? Is it yes? Is it no? Is it we have more work to do?
I'm not sure the context of that quote, so I can't speak directly to that quote. But what I can tell you, and maybe in a sense of reassuring, is that I have spent much time researching Yucca Mountain. I believe all the analyses that I have done are technically defensible. As a scientist, I would not try to publish anything that wasn't technically defensible. It wouldn't be publishable. Most of the analyses that I did of Yucca Mountain for the book, which was published in 2006, were done in the early 2000 timeframe. That was before the license application was submitted. I have not read the license application. I have not read yet the NRC's technical analyses. Of course, with time, knowledge changes, more evidence comes to light, and I intend to keep an open mind.
I appreciate your candor and your scientific integrity. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. We were talking about votes. We took a vote this spring on finishing the NRC study. 326 members voted to do that, so I think it's by far the majority bipartisan consensus that we move forward, at least finishing the study. With that, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that June 26, 2012 NRC Office of Inspector General report concerning possible violations of Reorganization Plan Number 1 of 1980, NRC's internal commission procedures, be introduced into the record. Without objection, the document will be entered into the record. In conclusion, I'd like to thank you, all your witnesses and my colleagues. You can see it was very well attended, a lot of good questions participating today in the hearing. I want to remind members that they have 10 business days to submit questions for the record, and I ask the chairman and the commissioners a willingness to agree to respond should you receive any questions from members of the two subcommittees. With that, the subcommittee is adjourned.